so bad that it wasn't pretty.
The story of the Browns has always been wrapped in layers of secrecy, drama, and unspoken truths. For years, the family portrayed themselves as united, bound by faith, loyalty, and their plural lifestyle. Yet beneath the polished smiles and carefully constructed scenes, there were whispers, rumors of financial dealings that went far beyond what the cameras ever revealed. Those who watched closely sensed that money flowed in ways that didn't always add up, and over time, the signs became harder to ignore. The empire Kody Brown built was not only a house of relationships, but also a house of financial cards, ready to collapse under the weight of hidden payments, private transactions, and secret agreements. What you're about to hear is the unraveling of those payments. The Browns never wanted you to see, and it begins with the show. Sister Wives was to be a story of love, of religion, of being able to create a life beyond the confines of convention. But television is ever about money. It is about storylines. Every interview, every filmed public appearance, every stage, managed family event came with a paycheck attached. Early on, the paychecks were modest, enough to keep the family afloat. But with each jump in ratings and recognition of the Browns, the paychecks grew. Larger paychecks meant greater financial obligations to split among multiple wives, dozens of children, and Kody himself, who felt entitled to control it all. And Kody wasn't only handling household costs, he was handling individuals, managing to keep his wives reliant, juggling who got what, and making sure nobody had the whole picture of the finances of the family. And thus, the first secret payments started. Christine afterwards insinuated and closed door talks that a few wives received allowances, off the books, funds for loyalty, for keeping mum. For being true to the family story, Janelle, with her frugal eye on figures, realized that some accounts didn't add up. But to question Kody would oftentimes usher in strain, conflicts, or worse, danger of being shunned within the very family itself. The production team, of course, had their own methods. Reality television thrives on drama, and sometimes producers would quietly slip extra money to certain family members if they agreed to share a shocking confession or create tension on camera. Robyn, often seen as the most favored wife, was rumored to have received such bonus payments, particularly in episodes that centered on her struggles or sacrifices. These were not officially disclosed as part of the family's earnings, and other wives were rarely informed. To the audience, it looked like natural storytelling. Behind the scenes, it was a financial chess game, with Kody and producers carefully deciding who would get rewarded and who would be left wondering why their bank balance seemed so much lighter than expected. But the true burden of these payments were debts. As the family grew into homes and land transactions, the question of mortgages, property taxes, and maintenance became increasingly convoluted. Coyote Pass was pitched to them as their dream parcel, an emblem of togetherness and a future that they would all enjoy. But the truth was that illicit payments attached to that land ended up being one of the Browns' heaviest burdens. Kody transferred money between wives, using Christine's money to pay for Robyn's portion, using Janelle's income to fund his enterprises, and having Meri take out loans in her own name with promises of payoff that were broken. Each of the wives felt that she was investing in the family, but really they were bankrolling Kody's dream, an enterprise that none of the wives would ever significantly enjoy. Court records eventually showed that side payments were made to pay off accumulating bills, sometimes in cash and sometimes through unknown accounts. The payments never showed up on proper family statements, but they siphoned off resources in secret. Christine had once likened it to trying to fill a well with water. But somebody kept digging a hole at the bottom. The hole was Kody's vision, and the show is stealthy machinations, and the water was the earned by the sweat paycheck that disappeared before reaching its rightful owners. What makes this revelation even more striking is how long the Browns managed to keep it hidden. For years, the public saw only what was meant to be seen, a family struggling with love and jealousy, not money. Yet the financial tension was the undercurrent of nearly every conflict. Why did Christine grow resentful? Why did Janelle push for independence? Why did Meri feel increasingly alienated? The answers, though complicated, were tied not only to emotions, but also to dollars, secret payments, uneven distributions, and financial betrayals that eroded trust from within. The silence wasn't just about income. There were payments for silence too. When Christine opened up more about being unhappy, insiders close to the family assert that she was made an offer of a payment, in effect, hush money, in order to play down her complaints for the purposes of the show. She declined, and that refusal was one of the points that ignited her eventual exit. Janelle, being wiser to the ways of things, accepted some top-ups to her wages, although she knew them to be nothing short of bribes to keep her quiet. Meri, ever the outsider, was not always treated to the same. She was to be loyal by virtue, expected not to need any reward, her loyalty assumed. And then came Robyn. Many within the family assumed that Robyn not only received monthly payments, but also illicit lump payments, monies that were attached to her compliance to stand up for Kody, to safeguard the family image, and to be the favorite. The money came not only through family accounts, but perhaps through production itself, as payment to keep her the emotional center of the story. Although the other wives questioned their worth, Robyn was comforted by money that her position was solid. The straw that broke the camel's back was when rumors of these illicit payments reached the ears of the legal system. In early financial audits relating to the debts of the family, red flags were raised. Accounts revealed money taken with no description, large sums transferred with vague memos, and transactions labeled personal expenses. That seemed suspicious. Investigators wondered, were these transactions mere sloppy accounting, or intentional efforts to siphon money away from the wives and into secret stashes? What came to light was not only a tale of mismanaged finances, but of manipulation, secrecy, and betrayal. Every payment was about not just money, but about who was important to the family, who could be shushed, and who could be manipulated. And when the truth started coming to light, the Browns' empire saw fissures that not even secrecy could mend. The wives, previously connected by loyalty and fear, started to assemble the truth. Christine came to understand that all of her years of sacrifice were taken advantage of. Janelle comprehended that her sense of practicability had been turned against her, her consistent payments extracted without refund. Meri came to understand that her isolation wasn't emotional only but financial. She had been left out of payments that kept people in line. And Robyn, the theoretical favorite, came to understand that her security was only that of payments themselves. Without payments, her position within the family came to be significantly less guaranteed. This was the moment that everything shifted. The payments the Browns didn't want you to see were kept hidden no longer. They were proof. Proof of an empire of secrecy, of an empire of manipulation, and of an empire that was about to crumble beneath the burden of its own deceit. And when the court initiated its inquiry, what came out was more sensational than any of the scripts the producers might have conjured up. The courtroom was the platform on which the Browns' closely held secrets finally spilled out. Initially, it appeared to be another squabble about property and marital rights. But as auditors tugged at the threads, what fell apart was a tapestry interwoven with covert payments, hidden accounts, and a financial framework, so complicated that it was difficult to imagine a family putting it together without professional help. Kody Brown had always been proud of being the leader, the one who could keep everything running smoothly, but once the truth was revealed, even he couldn't spin it to save himself. The judge heard as financial experts outlined transactions which did not appear in the Browns' official books. For years, Kody had maintained that the family was a unit, that all dollars earned went into the group pot, only to be split equally between his wives and kids. But what came to light through bank statements and testimony was that the pot wasn't as collective as claimed. Rather, it was managed by Kody and dispensed selectively depending on who remained silent, who went along with the story of the show, and who chose not to challenge his authority. Christine, seated in the courtroom with quiet resolve, heard her sacrifices weighed in cold statistics. Decades of raising kids, caring for homes, supporting Kody's aspirations, all in exchange for less financial stability than had been led on to her, boiled down to one outcome: she was lied to. She recalled the hundreds of times she'd questioned Kody about money, only to be fobbed off with non-specific assurances that everything is fine or you just need to trust me. Those assurances now turned out to have been the rationales for payments she never saw. Janelle, ever the practical one, arrived armed. She had taken her own records, tiny journals. She never confided in anyone, because she had known something was amiss long before the courts became involved. In her level but firm tone, she told him how money would disappear from their shared accounts, how her earnings on side ventures would literally disappear into thin air without explanation, and how property transactions such as Coyote Pass turned into black holes financially that consumed resources without providing any return. When she spoke, it was not with rage, it was with accuracy, the kind that did not allow Kody to deny. Meri's role in the courtroom was quieter, but no less impactful. She had always felt left out, treated as if her loyalty was assumed but never rewarded. She testified about being excluded from discussions, how she often found out about family finances after decisions had already been made, and how her own investments were funneled away with promises of repayment that never came. For Meri, it was not merely about cash. It was about decades of feeling disposable, her work discounted and her trust betrayed. And then there was Robyn. Her evidence was the most fraught. She had benefited from many of these secret payments, though sometimes against her will. Sometimes, she admitted, she didn't even know that extra cash was being transferred into her accounts. Other times, she admitted to receiving bonuses or adjustments that were odd but were explained by Kody as a requirement for the family reputation. Under questioning by attorneys, Robyn stuttered, divided by her loyalty to Kody and by the irrefutable evidence before her. In the end, her words created an image of complicity and ignorance. She had gained, yes, but she had also been manipulated into thinking it was all legitimate. The judge's patience was thinning with every passing moment, as the extent of deception was revealed. These were not small oversights or naive misunderstandings. They were calculated patterns of deception, aimed at keeping the wives on separate sides and Kody in charge. Payments labeled as family expenses were channeled into personal accounts. The cash withdrawals came at the time of significant arguments, which indicated that money had been employed as a silence instrument. Even the production bonuses, which were to be distributed equally, were handed out selectively, where Robyn frequently got more than the rest. Behind every dollar figure was a human cost. Christine remembered nights spent lying awake worrying how she would pay for her children's needs, even as Kody told her the family was wealthy enough. Janelle remembered not getting around to fixing her house while money quietly went elsewhere. Meri talked of feeling invisible, her worries dismissed, while others garnered benefits she never glimpsed. Each wife bore the wounds of financial betrayal, and in that courtroom, those wounds were finally acknowledged. Kody, naturally, attempted to protect himself. He claimed that he had been dealing with an unprecedented situation, that navigating multiple households and dozens of children was inevitable to create uncertainty. He stated the secret payments were not secret but just misunderstandings. But his words sounded empty in light of recorded evidence. The judge reminded him that leadership did not justify deception, and responsibility entailed more than maintaining appearances for a television show. Most notable to observers was the emotional breakdown of the family. The Browns had touted themselves for decades as pioneers, evidence that plural marriage was possible in contemporary America. But in that courtroom, they seemed less like pioneers and more like victims of their own making. The wives who once were tied together by loyalty and faith, now were a force of disillusionment together. Kody, once such a confident patriarch, appeared more and more cornered. his rationalizations sounding more like excuses than reasons. As the hearings went on, there were further revelations. Payments connected to Coyote Pass had been sidetracked to pay for Kody's personal debts. Education funds meant to benefit the children had been spent on luxuries. Production bonuses, intended to benefit the family as a whole, had been unevenly distributed, resulting in subtle resentments and nursing grudges for years. The judge described it as a system of inequity designed to maintain control at the expense of fairness. The wives, upon hearing that, were both vindicated and heartbroken. Vindicated, since their suspicions were finally confirmed. Heartbroken, since the man they trusted had not only betrayed them emotionally but financially as well. For Christine, it was affirmation for why she had left. For Janelle, it was vindication for her insistence on financial independence. For Meri, it was confirmation that her alienation had been a set up, and for Robyn, it shattered the illusion that her favored position was secure. It had been bought, and now the currency was gone. So did the public. We too began to view the Browns differently. Fans who used to marvel at their strength began to wonder if the story they were telling was real. Was there ever a time when the family was really together? Or was it always a matter of money? Were the emotional showdowns we witnessed on television real? Or were they driven by clandestine payoffs off camera? Reality and reality television blurred until it was no longer possible to discern truth from acting. Ultimately, part 2 of this narrative was not so much about financial records or legal testimony. It was about trust. Trust that had been compromised in ways that could never be remade whole. The payments the Browns didn't want you to know about weren't simply concealed transactions. They were also signs of an even greater betrayal, one that reached to the very core of what the family professed to stand for. And as the judge made ready to deliver the next round of rulings, everyone in that courtroom was aware of one thing: the Browns' empire would never be the same. The secrets were finally out, and nothing could spin them back into the darkness. The fallout from the disclosures did not stop in the courtroom. Far from it. Actually, the trial was merely the spark that set off a wildfire of repercussions, both within and beyond the family itself. The Browns, those familiar faces from the world of polygamy, religion, and grit, were now viewed through a completely different prism, with each payment, each secret account, every financial breach. People reframed what they thought they knew about them. And for the relatives themselves, it was a reckoning they could no longer escape. Christine was the center of attention, not because she had asked for it, but because her tale touched so many for years. She had been the good wife, the one who catered to the children, the one who smiled for the cameras while her heart was shattering. Now, with proof that her sacrifices had been exploited, she was no longer a participant on a reality television show. She was a symbol of strength. Fans came out in support of her, applauding her bravery to speak up, to leave, and to create a new life beyond the shadow of Kody's empire. Christine accepted this new stage with caution, aware that public sympathy did not fill the years she had lost, but provided her with the strength to move on. Janelle also changed, pragmatic and strong yet unassuming. She had frequently been underestimated, even by her own family, but when the revelations came out, everyone saw that her practicality had saved her. She had maintained one foot outside Kody's reach, building up her own sources of income, and holding on to some independence. Now those decisions benefited her, while others were bogged down trying to extricate themselves from financial snares Kody had created. Janelle had a more straightforward road ahead. She became an advocate not only for herself but for others in similar situations, using her story to highlight the importance of financial independence, especially for women in unconventional family structures. Meri's journey was more complicated. For years, she had been the most isolated wife, the one on the outside looking in. She had hoped, prayed, and waited for recognition that never came. The courtroom disclosures validated what she had suspected all along, that she had been intentionally left out, both in terms of finances and emotions. Initially, the reality battered her. She felt silly for believing in promises never fulfilled, for having given so much to a family that regarded her as disposable. But with the settling dust, something within Meri changed. No longer content to exist in Kody's shadow, she started to create her own space, finding value in her autonomy. Though her journey was unclear, it was at last her own. Robyn's reality, though, was the most disturbed. For years, she had been perceived as Kody's favorite, the wife who was showered with the most attention, the most affirmation, and the most economic security. But the reality came to light that her stance was not supported by love but by clandestine payments and manipulations that guaranteed her loyalty. When those clandestine payments got exposed, the fantasy busted audience members who empathized with her earlier on now questioned her intentions. Did she have knowledge of the clandestine arrangements? Did she accept payments voluntarily intended to hush others? Or was she only another pawn on Kody's board of games? Robyn herself could hardly put these questions to themselves. Her formerly secure position in the family now seemed tenuous, based on a foundation that had disintegrated overnight. And then there was Kody. For the first time in his life, the patriarch who had constructed an empire of domination found himself completely powerless.